watching BattleCast Primetime. Coming up, have you pre-ordered your copy of Command & Conquer 4? Why not? We'll show you how. The Zone Captain comes to life in Birth of a Unit. Christmas comes early this year as Jeremy Fiesel gets your questions answered in a holiday edition of Ask a Developer. And as always, AoeNiaN in his corner, an action-packed BattleCast 10, and AoeNiaN returns to our main event arena to defend his title against Excess Blood. BattleCast Primetime starts now. You're logged into BattleCast Primetime. I'm Raj Joshi. Countdown to the release of Command & Conquer 4 Tiberium Twilight. Pre-order now. You'll get exclusive access to tons of CNC4 bonus items. You'll get a single-player prequel mission, the soundtrack to the game performed by the London Philharmonic, an autographed headshot of the Dark Messiah himself, Joe Coogan, thanks to GameStop Online, and you will be the first to experience the 5v5 multiplayer mayhem and get a chance to shape the game. We need your feedback, so pre-order and get access to the beta process. We'll be making the beta public in January, so get your pre-order disc and keep your eyes peeled to www.commandandconquer.com for more information. The holidays are in full swing, and the CNC4 dev team is in a festive spirit and is bringing your presents early. That's right, Jeremy Fiesel is here to answer your forum questions in this month's Gunner Optic Ask a Developer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special non-denominational Ask a Developer. Well, here's the first youngin'. Come on over here and sit on Santa's lap.
Santa!
And what can I do for you?
Santa, can you tell me about the new support powers in CNC?
Well, CNC4 has got some great new support powers for all of the different support classes. You can summon units, you can do direct damage, you can set things on fire, you can increase the veterancy of a large portion of units, heal them, or even create a Tiberium explosion. It's a Christmas extravaganza.
Yeah!
Well, we've got another person in line. Hop on over here onto Santa's ample lap. And what can I get for you this non-denominational holiday?
Can you tell me about some of the Tier 3 units?
In Command & Conquer 4, we're bringing back your old favorites. You'll see the Mammoth Tank, and in addition, you'll have an enormous Mastodon that can fire sonic shells. You'll have a Black Widow that can carry smaller spiders on its back, and huge capital ships that cast enormous fireballs onto the battlefield.
Fireballs?
It's a red Christmas. And who's this pretty little girl? Come on over and sit on Santa's lap.
What's up, buddy?
And what can I get for you, Aaron AoeNiaN Kaufman?
Well, the community has been asking me forever, Santa, forever, what mutants can you control in CNC4?
In
Can you control the mutants?
CNC4, we have gone far above and beyond the Mutant Marauder from CNC3.
Really?
You can build enormous buses with 4 Gatling turrets. You can build explosive Visceroids straight from the screen. And even the Mutant Gorilla, which was renamed by the community to the Ironback. What a great question. I hope that all of our great forum elves just keep posting and giving us more great ideas and enjoy playing the CNC4 beta.
Thanks, Jeremy. He's a giver, folks, and so am I. Skip the letters to Santa. I and our sponsors at Logitech are bringing you what you really want. The best RA3 action from Conquer Cup 14 and some kick-ass Tiberium Saga Brawls from GameReplays.org. It's time for the BattleCast 10. Unleash Traveler and Technique as Zocom on Dust Bowl. Unleashed in the North drops 2 refineries and pumps out some extra harvesters, while Technique in the South expands to the Southern expansion. Unleashed sends a squad of Seeker tanks, Disintegrators, and Storm Riders to harass, but he is pushed out by Tech's massive Hammerhead squad. These guys become a wrecking crew as Technique loads them up with rocket squads. But Unleashed uses his mastermind to capture and sell some key structures and pumps out a massive planetary assault carrier force. But they get gunned down while they focus fire on the one unit that can attack them. Where is Unleashed mastermind now? Crushed Unleashed captures another structure for some cash, but Technique won't let him near his MCV. Fast forward to the late game. Epics face off, but the Hexapod is no match for those vetted choppers. It is only a short time before that is GG. Echo Mark of Cain versus Great 428 Black Hand on tournament decision. Great in the south and Echo in the north have their first big showdown over the southern expansion fields. But it's a stalemate, so Great 428 sends in a Redeemer to settle the score, but it's taken out by defensive structures. Echo hides both bases with disruption towers, so Great runs in his attack bikes and throws down Tiberium Bane detonation in the north, while he blind fires into the expansion to take out the other. Echo gets another one up, but not before Great sees the Redeemer facility. Great continues to bombard the invisible expansion base with support powers and artillery fire. Then a stealth Redeemer sets off a raised generator and Great expansion. Great skillfully drops a decoy Redeemer in Echo's expansion to see under the cloak. And then Secret Shrine creeps and drops base defenses right in the middle of Echo's base. Echo counters with triple beam cannons. Great responds by setting Echo's base on fire with upgraded purifiers. Echo tries to stomp out the flames and fight fire with fire. Echo relocates his base, but Great lays down some great EMPs and Vane detonates Echo's MCV. Talk about support power smackdown! Random Erico Empire versus Tengu Allied on Fire Island. In this second match of 3 for the Conquer Cup semifinals, Eriku rushes to the oil derrick with dojo cores. He sets one down and sends the other to play with the dogs. Ah, run, cutie puppy! Tengu attacks with some javelins as a massive Imperial Warrior squad pulls back from the center, and Erico loses his dojo core to minigunners loaded with peacekeepers. They push but are chased out by a tsunami tank. Erico strikes with tank busters, tsunamis, and Imperial Warriors. Tengu can't get a single unit out of his armor facility. The MCVs try to join the fight, but it is too little, too late. Random Erico and Tengu face off again in round 3. Same starts, same factions. Erico rushes his dojos again, but takes too long to unpack them and gets swarmed by peacekeepers. Tengu starts harassing Erico's ore collectors because he knows that Erico is focused on the center. Erico's MCV takes out the peacekeepers, but now he has no ore collectors, which means Tengu has the money advantage. The MCV tries to chase the multi-gunners, but they are too fast and take out both of Erico's ore collectors again. In desperation, Erico sells his MCV and goes for the oil derrick, but it's not enough income to pump out a resistance. Tengu advances to the finals. Don Dada Allied, aka Technique, versus Zyke as the Soviets on Temple Prime. In another semi-final round, Zyke is already down 1 game to Don Dada and needs a Hail Mary. He pumps out a few bears and scouts Don Dada's airfield. Zyke tries to counter by pumping out some flak troopers, but it is not enough as the bombing runs destroy his barracks. Zyke packs up and takes his MCV center, but what's this? He runs right into the center of Don Dada's base. He throws up barracks and a Tesla tower, but they take too long to build and the MiGs are not enough to take the bombers down. It's 4th and long and Zyke tries to sell his MCV and capture the airfield. He's tackled only an inch away from creating an upset. Nice try, Zyke. We'll see you in the finals, Don Dada. Demolisher Blackhand versus 3D U3 Vanilla Nod on tournament decision. Demolisher is in the south and 3D in the north. 3D starts harassing with attack bikes at Demo's main base and takes out a harvester. At the southern expansions, Redeemers face off, but 3D gets a taste of an EMP Obelisk Tiberium Redeemer sandwich. Say that 3 times fast, 3D. 3D falls back and sells off his expansion as Demolisher pushes forward. Epic space off again, and this time Demolisher can't take the heat. Fast forward to late game. 3D tries to expand to the northern expansion field, but gets swarmed by rockets. 3D sends his Redeemer to go stomp it out, but Demo has another Redeemer build and starts taking out the main base of 3D. Demo decides 3D has suffered long enough and sends a Cloaked Reckoner and Commando to clear out 3D. And that's game over. Tengu and Don Dada face off in an allied mirror match on Fire Island. Tengu yellow in the north and Don in the south as green. Peacekeepers face off in the center of the map. Tengu pumps out some multi-gunners and takes out an oil derrick. He pushes forward and takes one of Don's ore collectors out, but loses most of his attack force. Don pushes back and freezes Tengu's base defense, and multi-gunners light up the sky like 4th of July. Jump forward and Guardian tanks face off in the center channel. Units fall on both sides, but Don's superior focus fire wins out. Don pushes forward and chases down Tengu's MCV for the win. Tengu and Don face off again on Tempo Prime, but Tengu switches to Imperial forces. Tengu rushes forward and finds an airfield. He captures Tengus over the plains, but Don throws up another airfield and swarms with Vindicators and Apollo fighters. A bomber barrage as the onslaught continues, but Don fails to take out the mech bay. Will that be a fatal mistake? VX choppers start filing out, and Tengu tries to protect them by switching between ground and air modes. But Don Dada has Tengu's number and waits for the choppers to take to the skies and takes them out with Apollos. Don Dada attacks Tengu's northern expansion with little resistance and bends up his riptides. Sensing defeat, Tengu sails off. Congrats, Don Dada, or should I say, technique. Greasy Epidemic and AoeNiaN face off in a CNC3 GDI mirror on Tournament Rift. AoeNiaN in the east expands to the center as Greasy expands south. Both face off in a Predator tank fight, but AoeNiaN has the advantage in numbers and that his forces are actually being repaired. AoeNiaN pushes forward, but he spreads his tanks out. But as a famous World War II tank general once said, you hit somebody with your fist and not with your fingers spread. Hurting, AoeNiaN sends his harvesters to the blue field and gets a quick econ boost. Meanwhile, Greasy Attack moves some of his tanks through AoeNiaN's main base as a distraction, while the rest of his forces clean out the center. AoeNiaN says, get off my land, as he moves his MCV to the center and starts dropping barracks and base defenses. 16 in total. I know, I counted. With a job well done, a no man's land appears, and AoeNiaN moves his MCV to set up shop by Greasy's southern expansion. Continues to sound gross. He forces Greasy out and pushes with a massive tier 1 spam. Unable to match the numbers, Greasy snags and sells AoeNiaN's refinery and MCV. You would think this is GG for AoeNiaN, but no! He pushes forward and focus firing on buildings until the grease fire finally goes out. Way to persevere, AoeNiaN, putting that grease fire back where it belongs. Club Zones GDI and Demolisher Nod face off on Tournament Rift. Demolisher in the west and Thug in the east. Thug expands in the center, but Demolisher has some Shadow teams standing by to watch. But Demolisher forgets about the Shadow teams as Thug starts an attack. Thug takes out much of Demo's base and even inadvertently runs over all but one member of the Shadow teams. But this little guy is a powerhouse. Watch as he takes out 3 docked orcas and avoids death as tanks and rocket buggies fire at him. While those tanks attack Demo's expansion, the Shadow Man takes out 3 more orcas, drops a beacon, and waits for artillery fire. But the artillery fire goes to stopping a huge tank force from taking out Demo's expansion. Demo turns up the heat with the fire from an avatar and demolishes the base. Our fully vetted Shadow friend finally falls. Absolutely furious, Thug tries to take out some harvesters with a drive-by shootout, but it's an utter fail. Thug leaves in anger as his turf war is over. Nice work, Demolisher.
The 10, brought to you by Logitech, makers of the customizable G9X laser mouse.
Nothing says Christmas like the Nod soldiers running through fields of Tiberium. Think about it. Don't you feel festive? Stick around, on its way is Apoc's Corner. Ask a developer in the main event. In the lane, Nod is glistening, and then Kane started whistling. It's a beautiful night for a Nod GDI fight, walking in a BattleCast wonderland.
Promotional considerations for BattleCast Primetime is brought to you by Cooler Master Storm, makers of the Sentinel Advanced Gaming Mouse. Strength, security, and control. Storm Tactics. Use promo code AEAGamers and get 15% off your next purchase. Gunner Optics Advanced Gaming Eyewear. See better, play better. Stop frying your eyes and go to gunners.com and use promo code Tiberian to get 15% off your Gunner Optics Advanced Gaming Eyewear. Logitech, makers of the G35 surround sound headset. Victory never sounded so good, thanks to game-changing 7.1 surround sound powered by Dolby.
Welcome back to BattleCast Primetime. Your community elves have been hard at work this month. Here with his very own holiday corner is Aaron Apoc Candy Cane Kaufman. Aaron, what do you have for us today?
I've got a lot, Raj, and welcome to the Corner, Commanders, and a very happy holidays. Now, I want to follow up on a little thing that Raj mentioned earlier. That's our pre-order for Command & Conquer 4. If you want awesome, bomb-tastic, fantastic exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else, You need to head over to our official website right now and pre-order. It's that simple. So check it out. Our development team heard your cries loud and clear, and we decided to give you an early Christmas present. So Big Mike and I headed to the North Pole with our art director, and we decided to redesign the Nod avatar and the Nod engineer. And I'm happy to be the first to reveal it to you. So check out these few bits of exclusive gameplay footage. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the new avatar and the new engineer. We hope you like them, and I'd love to thank our impassioned CNC fans for all your feedback. Keep it up. Now it's time for a little spotlight from my main co-community commander. Take it away, Tupac.
Thanks, Aaron. This week I'd like to spotlight a Red Alert 3 map by Acid Crash titled Duel Duel. This one is about pure team play. Land masses represent each team and are separated by a river. There is a small island town located in the center of the map containing a veteran academy and expansions. There are also remote ocean islands with expansions and oil derricks to diversify and protract the gameplay. Download it now and kick some ass!
Thanks, Tupac. Now it's time for a little mod spotlight. Those geniuses behind the hit Total Conversion mod Mideast Crisis 2 for Command & Conquer 3 Tiberium Wars are taking AAA modding to a new level with their Release 2 update. All the updates contained in here are based on community wishes. Here's a few of the best ones. The GOI faction gets a significant defense upgrade with the Ifrit tower that can deploy Mr. Stop shells and can also deploy into a powerful missile turret. They also get 2 sub-factions selectable from the command center, the Remembrance and Progressive Party, each with their own unique powers. Veterancy and target tags are now in to help distinguish enemy and friendly units in mirror matches. Nice touch, guys. And finally, a wealth of global changes and balance and bug and map adjustments also come in this massive update. So if you want this and more on Mideast Crisis 2, head over to their official website at isotx.com. And for my last call, in keeping with the CNC3 theme, I'm happy to be the first in the world to debut the exclusive trailer for CNC3 The Forgotten, a total conversion mod coming for Tiberium Wars. You know it, you love it. Check out this live action trailer right now.
It appears GDI's appetite for the blood of innocence continues to grow.
You know, I believed that once. For all of Kane's lies, he was right about one thing. There's no place for us in GDI's sanitized world. They used to have a name for this place, but no one bothers anymore. It's just a red zone. To those ready to dream once more, join us. We will be waiting. All hell is about to break loose.
Now to check out the rest of this awesome trailer, head over to our official website. Well, that's it for this month. Enjoy the rest of the show. Back to you, Raj.
Thanks, Aaron. I've got to kick it back now to BattleCast Primetime commentator Jeremy Fiesel. This month we see the Zone Captain come to life thanks to Kingston Technologies in this edition of Birth of a Unit.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Fiesel, a gameplay designer on Command & Conquer 4, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Zone Captain. So the Zone Captain is really a conglomeration of ideas. We really like the idea of the zone infantry being very large and very powerful, and then having sort of this ultimate leader that can lead them through the battlefield and do some really amazing stuff if you use him very well.
Hi, my name is Kichma. I'm a modeler and texture artist for CNC4. The art director gave me the concept sketch, and from here I will start to model and then texture. And this is the first version that we have, which is the color is more like the GDI color. The art director want to make it, stand out more. So what we come up with the solution is to make modify the texture to make it brighter. After that, I will hand it to effect artists to do special effects.
We also really like the idea of the ion cannon as a weapon. It's one of the more iconic weapons from GDI. So something we've been toying around with is, how do you add that effectively to a unit and still get the really cool feel of the weapon?
Hi, my name's Aram Granger, and I'm blowing stuff up on Command & Conquer 4. So right now this is kind of an iconic explosion from Command & Conquer 3, and we needed to reproduce it, but on a smaller scale for a smaller unit, obviously. This is where the lasers from space come down and quickly coalesce into some gigantic beam. Up here on my other monitor, you can see a small fluid sim that I rendered out of Maya. That is then tiled and mapped onto a single image, which is then taken by the individual particles. This one image is scrolled through in order to give the illusion of one particle having an internal roiling. So several particle systems combined to make this one large explosion. It's actually two large explosions. There's a pre-fire and then there's an explosion at the very end. The original unit force fire, and it looks like that.
The Zone Captain has a decent amount of hit points, but being an infantry, significantly lower than any sort of tank unit. So what you're going to want to do is stick him inside of one of the GDI's heavy, either defensive structures like a bunker or a mobile bunker like the Armadillo, and drive him into the enemy area and then use that attack, which has to stay stationary in order to fire off, hit the enemy, do a significant amount of damage, and then get out of there while you're waiting for the next firing cycle to occur. It's one of those weapons that's incredibly powerful if you use it right, but if you don't, you're going to end up with a bunch of dead captains.
Zone Captain coming to a battlefield near you. And speaking of battlefields, it's the time you've all been waiting for. This is the main event. I'm joined by the Command & Conquer 4 expert himself, Jeremy Fiesel, to get you all into the juicy action. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks, Raj. Always happy to be back on BattleCast Primetime.
And we're always happy to have you. So this month we've got AoeNiaN back in our King of the Hill style match series. His opponent today is Excess Blood. So Jeremy, tell me about these players. What do you think we're going to see here today? Blood?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of blood on the battlefield, Raj. Both of these players, incredibly high-end players. As you recall, AoeNiaN won one of our previous matches, and both of these players have played in the ladder season. They're excellent players. We're going to see a high micromanagement, really just a really high-end game today, and we should see a lot of action between both of these players. We know that both of these players like building up large mid-game forces and sending them in for a huge battle that includes both macro and micromanagement. I think we're going to see some really cool action on the field.
Well, it's time to put our reputation on the line and pick a victor. Who is your AMD pick of the match?
So you can see that I'm dressed like the dark horse today, and you know why that is, Raj? Do you know why that is? Because I fight for Nod. I'm gonna have to go with our Nod player today. We're gonna see some excess blood.
Excess blood it is for Mr. Jeremy Fiesel. And I'm gonna have to still go with AoeNiaN because, gosh darn it, he's still sexy. Gentlemen, to your corners. I want a good, clean fight. Not really. Let the games begin.
Tonight's matchup is between AoeNiaN and Excess Blood on Pipeline Problems. Let's get started. We've got AoeNiaN playing as Reaper 17 in the south. We've got Excess Blood playing as Blackhand in the north. This is Pipeline Problems, which was a CNC3 map. It was in the CNC3 ladder. Ultimately, we removed it for Kane's Wrath, but it's still a very, very interesting map. Let's go ahead and start the match. So what we're going to see here in terms of overall metagame gameplay is that both players will initially build up and go for their Tiberium spikes, which are adjacent to their bases. They will then go for the blue Tiberium fields, which are in each corner. Now remember that blue Tiberium, which is something that's been scaled back pretty significantly in Kane's Wrath, provides double the income from regular Tiberium. Both players going for their blue Tiberium fields at the beginning of the game is going to allow both players to set up a very solid push timing in the middle of the game, roll forward with tier 2 or possibly even tier 3 forces to take over the two large green Tiberium fields in the middle of the map. Whoever controls this middle map element and these two middle map expansions is ultimately going to win this game. Both of these players are playing as very solidly steamroll factions, Reaper 17 and Blackhand. They're very good at building up these mid-game forces with very powerful and large amounts of units that will allow them to push into the center of this map. I think both of these forces are very strong on this particular map, and it's going to produce a very interesting combat or conflict in the middle of the map as soon as we get to that point where both of those blue fields are dry. So you're probably asking yourself, what can players do at this point to affect the later sort of portion of the game.
Well, I had a different question, but I like your question.
You know what? I'm going to go with your question first, and then we'll cycle back around.
I didn't have another question.
Excellent, Raj. So both of these players, realizing that they're going to have to deal with this large group of forces in the middle of the map come Tier 2 or Tier 3 when they're trying to expand to their next expansion, realize that they need to affect their opponent as much as they can in the early game. So you can see they're already expanding to the blue Tiberium. Now is the critical point. Now is when you need to decide, are you going to go just pure Harvester buildup? Are you going to try to Harvester assassinate your opponent and try to get ahead of him in forces? Or are you going to try to do a little bit of both and build up maybe one refinery or one or two refineries at each location, build up some early attack bike forces or some early seeker forces, take down your opponent's harvesters, and then try to get your mid-game sort of bluster of forces built up faster than your opponent as long as he has less harvesters than you. We could see anything really at this point in the game, and whatever they do here, as long as it's effective, is very solidly going to affect the later game. So you can see here that AoeNiaN has built up a large number of harvesters at this field. He's already got 4. He's going to need 5 or 6 in order to completely mine the field. His opponent, however, has gone for attack bikes. He's already got his war factory up, and instead of going with some early harvesters, he decided to do that harassment that we were talking about. Black Hand infantry also very, very good. So one of the things that Reaper does in early game in order to counter attack bikes is build these shard walkers if they aren't building any more harvesters, or they build a lot of disintegrators. He built a large number of disintegrators, and almost all of them have been taken out by a couple of Confessor squads. A fairly smart move by both players, but then again, he was also able to get out with his attack bikes intact, which means that both players are still about on the same equal footing. The Black Hand player, although, has, because he went for those early attack bikes, is a little bit more behind in terms of resources. Although it looks like the Screen player has yet to expand to his blue Tiberium field, which, once again, I'm going to contradict myself, and they're almost equivalent in economy at this time because he had expanded to his blue field a little bit earlier. And indeed, he has also expanded down to his blue field. Both players probably had very, very similar timing there, which means that the Screen forces are maybe just a little bit ahead of in terms of the economy. Here comes that group of 5 attack bikes again. They're going to be able to harvester snipe and hopefully slow down his opponent's gathering of resources so that he can take the middle of the map or get to, epics or tier 3 faster.
So, I mean, this is strictly harassment here, right? To just keep him busy?
You got it. And his opponent knows that. He's got much slower forces down here, so he's playing it very defensively. You can see here he's really sitting behind sort of his wall of units and this little plateau here in the middle, hanging out by his repairable, or his structures that repair him. And that will allow him to kind of push back his opponent's forces, protect his harvesters, and then build up to a really solid Reaper mid-game.
Well, he's doing what I do best, fleeing in terror.
Retreating back to his base. So, I mean, that's an interesting maneuver you see there. His opponent might actually have some forces in his base. If we could head back up to the base and see where those attack bikes are going, that'd be very interesting. Because he might be just going back to defend at this point, but it looks like he just wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do with his units. He probably Q-selected him. So he's built up, a very slightly larger force, but at the same time, both of the players at this time are building up almost very similar forces with very similar economies. Nobody's really done any effective harassment yet, so there's not a whole lot he can do with this group except force his opponent to stay on his toes, keep moving to the left, to the right. Is he going to attack my main Tiberium field? Is he going to attack my expansion Tiberium field? So another thing that we need to be, and in order to defend from this, he's thrown up 2 photon cannons already, which is going to be more than enough to just push those attack bikes back as long as he needs to. So what we really need to look at this point is, what are the Tiberium fields of both of the players looking like? How much Tiberium have they already harvested, and how much do we have left here? You can kind of see there down at the bottom left. Let's scroll down to that Tiberium field. It's about halfway done. Let's scroll over to his main base field real quick. Another about halfway done Tiberium field there. This one's almost mined out. And what about the other Tiberium field at the other main base? That one's about halfway done too. So the Screen player's a little bit farther ahead, has a few more units than the Nod player, but both of them really just building up a very large mid-game force. Down here you can see Shard Walkers, you can see Devourer tanks, you can see Disintegrators, very strong mid-game forces, good at taking out a very large variety of different things, has decent range, has decent anti-infantry, has decent anti-tank. He's fairly well protected from just about everything. Meanwhile, his opponent has thrown up two barracks, and he's going to be going for the sort of traditional Black Hand mid-game infantry push, which is very powerful against Reaper 17, who need to really effectively spam a large number of Shard Walkers in that case, and use their powers very effectively in order to be able to counteract a really solid Black Hand infantry spam. Again, both these players very high-end players. We should see some really interesting stuff go on here. And it looks like he's just going down to scout his opponent's taking up the tip spike down there, and almost got himself trapped up in that corner, but not quite. So both players really trying to retain as many forces as they can at this point. They're realizing that whoever's going to lose the huge attack that's going to occur in the middle of the map is probably going to be downhill from there. So they want to really, retain as much attack power as they can and not lose any of their income until then. So you can see that the Reaper player, using that defense, that really strong defensive position and that blue Tiberium field, has allowed him to create both Tier 3, his Epic War Factory, and his Epic Unit, while creating a very large army at the same time. And I think this is going to be the beginning of the end. This is where he's got a large number of charged Reaper tripods as well. This is where he's pushing towards the center. If he takes that center Tiberium field, he's going to do really an excellent job of just rolling over his opponent at that point. And his opponent, in order to counteract this, sending his units down the back of his base because he realizes that Eradicator is very slow. But look, just look at all of those different defensive structures that he's got over there. He's got 3 different photon cannons, and he threw up that the stasis field so that he could keep these things alive long enough to bring these slower, larger, heavier hitting units back into the fray.
I mean, sadly, it doesn't look like it's really even an equal battle.
It wasn't there, and it wasn't on the side of Nod at first, but then because he had lost so many units to those photon cannons, it went back the opposite direction. Really excellent use of powers by AoeNiaN, allowing him to keep that expansion alive. At the same time, we see that our Nod opponent, Excess Blood here, is going to try to do really a pincher maneuver. He had sent all of his vehicles down the backside of his base to pull him out of place, and then he's using his infantry here to do as much damage as he can to this Eradicator hexapod and hopefully try to take it down.
I didn't think it'd be such a formidable force for Nod, but they seem to be holding the ground pretty good here.
Black Hand Infantry are absolutely spectacular at this sort of steamrolling behavior. As long as you can keep them semi-protected, you allow the Confessor Cabals and the units that cost less but have more hit points, have a larger hit point to cost ratio, you allow them to die first and keep the missile squads in the back doing high amounts of damage to everything but not really dying. So one of the problems with infantry in the game is generally with the squad-based infantry system, the more damage you take, the less damage you do, which means that really the impetus is on you to keep as many infantry alive as possible and spread them out, create sort of this cone of death that you bring your opponent into. So as many of them are firing as they can at once, because they're so small, you can spread them out and do a lot of damage all at the same time. But then again, I mean, they're pretty slow, so they can't really run away. So let's get back to the battle and away from theory crafting. We've got some Scorpion tanks here doing some hit and run. So we've already seen him do really great maneuvering with those Scorpion tanks. He was able to take down a couple of those harvesters, slow down his opponent's ability to start mining from the central Tiberium field. Both players are going for their center expansion fields at this point, and this is what I was talking about. This is the huge mid to late game, groundbreaking, just center attack on the map where they're just going to try to push each other off of this sort of king of the hill on the center of the map. And you can see that Excess Blood is doing his best to try to skirt the center, getting away from those slower forces, the Corruptors, the Eradicator hexapod, the tripods, to try to take down some opportunistic units, and he's going to leave his large force of infantry up here, knowing that they can do a really large amount of damage, but also soak up a significant amount of damage. Seeing this double-pronged attack and knowing that he might lose some tech, he might lose his blue Tiberium field, whatever he has left over there, to the Scorpion tanks, he's going to pull his units back, and he'll even lose a large number of structures up here in this northern part of the map. He lost his Eradicator hexapod already, you can see there, and then he's built up a large number of buzzer hives. He's basically just trying to stall his opponent while he goes back and takes out those Scorpion tanks you can see that have already rolled into the direct dead center of his map. And wow, just look at how much damage he was able to do to those. I'm not even sure what those Scorpion tanks were able to do to his opponent's base. He threw up a storm column there in the middle of his Tiberium field, which is completely mined out, and was able to push off those Scorpion tanks and push them to the left out of his base. Let's head over to the left over here and see what those Scorpion tanks are doing. It looks like they've gone around the sort of photon cannon gauntlet that he had over there and just got completely out of the business. Meanwhile, up here, the large force of infantry was able to push through those buzzer hives. So one of the biggest things that we're seeing here is that AoeNiaN was really focusing on anti-tank units. He built the Reaper tripods, built the Eradicators. He was ready to face off against a Scorpion tank army, which
seemed like he was expecting a Scorpion tank rush.
And he even took out a huge number of the Scorpions, but he's just really not that able to deal with this large number of infantry that he's forced to go up against at this point. And at this point, in terms of the metagame, the economy of the map, both the players have been pushed out of their main base. So it's almost like if you don't have what you need at this point, or you can't effectively effectively use what you have to get what you need, which is take down those infantry units, then you're going to have a really hard time coming back. You can see up here just to the north, let's head just to the north for a second and see that Excess Blood has created a forward fire base. He's already thrown up two refineries there. He's got two Hands of Nod. He's able to pump out a significant amount of infantry just from this little area here, and that's allowing him to continuously fund this sort of push that's going to keep pushing his opponent back. You've got the Eradicator Hexapod is back in the mix. Looks like some excellent use of Phase Field has been used here, but at the same time, I mean, just look at all those infantry and look at the control, how they're constantly spread out. He only loses a couple of them to getting squished at any one given time, and none of the units that he's using are really doing a large amount of damage to this infantry blob. I might almost suggest that he use his Corruptors as more infantry damaging units rather than damage soaks, just based on the amount of damage they could do versus the amount of damage they're preventing at this point.
I mean, how does he get him to fan out in that way? Previously when we were a little further down on the map, I mean, he just seemed to have all his black hands kind of spread out in equal clumps everywhere. I mean, is he control grouping these guys? Or?
He's probably control grouping some of them. He's probably hitting X to scatter them when he needs to, and then grabbing a clump of them from one area. So when you play the game like this, when you have a large number of smaller units, what you're basically doing is you're grabbing smaller clumps of units and then moving them to the left, to the right, north, and south. So what has happened here? What has happened here right at the very end of the game? He lost all of those Reaper tripods. He lost his Eradicator Hexapod, and that's the end of the game. He didn't have any other funds in his main base. He had lost his both of his Tiberium fields were completely mined out, and he had lost that forward expansion. He just didn't have the economy that would allow him to continue pushing through that center of that map. Why don't we go to the resources tab, and we can sort of see what happened here at the end of the game. While AoeNiaN was doing a great job throughout most of the map, look what happens at the very end of the game. His opponent all of a sudden switches places with him because he was able to take that center of the map and keep his economy going, and that's what allowed him to just continuously pump those infantry. His opponent didn't have any economy at that time, wasn't able to counter, and bam, that's the end of the game. Congratulations to Excess Blood. I know I picked right when I picked you, buddy.
Oh, what an upset. I'm sorry, AoeNiaN. Didn't work out so well for you. But Jeremy, what would you say is a key point to this match? Take your pick of the Cooler Master play of the game.
I think it's really going to come down to, in this particular match, reading your opponent. What Excess Blood was able to do is create that force of tanks that forced his opponent to go anti-tank units, and then quickly switched up to infantry. And not only switched up to infantry, built two Hands of Nod in his base, poured out those infantry, expanded forward while keeping his opponent at or below the center line of that map, which prevented his opponent from doing any damage to his economy, and he just kept rolling from then on out. So the play of the game on this particular one is gonna have to go to Excess Blood's metagame control and his ability to just switch tactics directly in the center of the map without his opponent really realizing how strongly he was going for that alternate tactic. Great job, Excess Blood.
Now, good job with the switcheroo. Well, that's it for this month. Want more BattleCast Primetime action? Of course you do. So we'll be back after a short break for the winter, as our crew likes to hibernate. Until then, pre-order the game, gosh darn it! And keep logging on to www.commandandconquer.com for all of the latest news and info. Keep commenting on the show on the forums or by emailing bcpt@ea.com. Be sure and follow Command & Conquer on Facebook and BattleCast Primetime on Twitter, and stay in touch. For all of us at BattleCast Primetime, Aaron Kaufman, Jeremy Fiesel, and the behind-the-scenes crew, thank you very much for watching. Have a happy holiday season, and until next time, we'll see you on the battlefield.